Lowe's has arrived at my house with free truck delivery of my new riding mower, one that I did quite a bit of research and comparison on between it and other brands and models. And I guess it was kind of meant to be, because not only was this the first mower that caught my eye, but it also went on sale right at the point I was ready to make a purchase. And from what I've read, I'm not the only one that thinks the Craftsman T210 is a sweet spot, price versus feature-wise. It met all the key component criteria I'd laid out, checked all the boxes on my wish list, and then some. Plus, I think it looks cool. So let's take a detailed look at the elements that sold me on this particular Craftsman mower, like the included brush bar or bumper. It's important because coming from a rear engine rider where my feet were at the front of the mower, this has a long nose with a front engine. So I like the idea of a bumper just in case. And the T210 has a 42-inch cut deck. This meets not only my available storage space, but is also a large increase over my previous mower's 28-inch cut. And it's twin blade, and here's the factory standard blades. I also purchased the mulch kit that I'll be using this fall, but these blades should do just fine for cutting my summer weeds. And I wanted to make sure my new mower had a vented spindle setup. I want to keep a good airflow under the deck, and this isn't anything fancy, no cool fins, just open areas, but it should do the trick. I also wanted an easy to remove deck to keep maintenance as simple as possible. Another must, a wash port, so I can keep the deck tidy on the underside. Looking behind the deck, there's a glimpse at a key feature, and that's the transmission. This is a hydrostatic drive tucked into the rear, and after using my dad's mower, I'm sold on hydrostatic, and you'll see why in a minute. I wanted a mower with a metal hood, and that's not all that common these days, but Craftsman obliged with a nice thick steel engine cover. And the engine, another key element on my list, because I've spent too much time and money repairing the new Briggs & Stratton motors, and so have many others that I know of. But the Kohler engines I've been exposed to have fared far better, so Kohler was a must. In this case, it's a made in the USA 18 horsepower 5400 series single cylinder Kohler. Designed for simple access to the air filter and the dipstick, that's not always the case, though you would think it should be. I was also looking for a power plant that had a vertically mounted oil filter. I mean, why doesn't every mower have this? Less mess, and it doesn't partially drain while sitting. Oh, and that drain, a quick release was a must. The large capacity gas tank wasn't actually on my list at first, but after finding out this mower had a 3.1 gallon, it became another checkbox. As did the external fill port and the clicky securing cap. So too, the quick look tank window with 2 and 1 gallon indicator markers. Then there's this, the feature that really sets the T210 apart. What Craftsman calls tight turn, enabling a 5-inch turn radius. Pair that with strong cast iron front axles and nothing else in this price range comes close. Control locations are important to me as well, because accessing the functions on my rear engine rider was non-ergonomic, to say the least. It's more thought out here, like the flat bottom race-inspired steering wheel, functional on a riding mower because extra knee room. All the dash controls are in easy reach, like the left-mounted throttle slider with choke. To the center and down a bit is a dual function lever, first for controlling the parking brake and second the cruise control while in motion. Above that is a center-mounted multi-function hour meter, which along with hours shows things like battery voltage, low oil, and maintenance reminders. The two blanks on both sides of the hour meter are for higher tier Craftsman mowers. I believe one is for an electrical push to operate button and the other possibly a headlight switch, which is one of the few omissions I wish this mower had, and I'll come right back to that, but first the ignition. A single included key, it's very straightforward and easy to operate, and also where cut and reverse is enabled. But lacking a headlight switch, whenever the ignition is on, so were the headlights, and they're incandescent, so keep the switch off to avoid unwanted battery drain. And also the hour meter runs when the ignition switch is in the on position, so the engine doesn't have to be cranked for the hour meter to function. Down at the floorboard, we've seen the brake lever on the left side already, and on the right, a simple rocker for the hydrostatic transmission, forward and reverse, no manual shifting. I don't know if I can ever go back. The remaining controls are also within easy reach. To the right of the seat, the blade engagement lever and cut height settings. On my previous mower, both of these were at ankle level. On the left side of the seat is a cubby hole for possibly a phone, and there's a drain to keep it from holding water. Beside that, a cup holder for literally holding water. It too has a drain hole. Sticker-wise, there really aren't many on this mower. Most of the warnings that are plastered everywhere on most mowers are down on the floorboard in one large sticker, leaving the few others to be Craftsman markings and of course the Made in the USA proclamation. The seat itself has a lever for adjusting positions, which is another checkbox ticked, and the battery rests under the seat. 230 cold cranking amps. Now I've read in reviews that this battery dies almost right away, and mine arrived at under 12 volts, which I assume means the assembler installed it in the mower without first charging it, but it doesn't really matter to me because straight away I installed a quick connect charger cable. I'll let my diehard float charger top it off and keep it in good health. I keep mentioning things around the seat, but the seat itself is Craftsman branded vinyl, and I tested this out on other Craftsman mowers at Lowe's before my purchase, and so far it seems like it's going to be comfortable. Now let's talk tires, because these are Carlisle Turf Savers with a 15x6.0 up front, and by the way, the Lowe's assemblers did a great job not only putting my mower together and it being scratch free, but they also properly greased every fitting. Impressive. So 15x6 up front, 20x8 for the rear, and also Turf Saver, which I've seen complaints about, saying that they save turf but at the expense of traction. I would say not necessarily, because the instructions clearly state that the tires are overinflated from the factory, and boy were they. On mine, the front tires, which should be 10 psi max, were over 20, the rear pushing 30. Properly set, not only is the ride more comfortable, but I haven't had any traction issues. Okay, now to the real benchmark. Can it cut? I have it gassed up and warmed up, and note here where the exhaust is coming out. Left front and pointing at the ground. More on that soon. And while the mower's ready for the mow, I discovered that the seat cubby is a little too small for an iPhone 11, possibly could fit an iPhone 10, and while my 11 did fit in the dash cubby, I didn't like the idea of it bouncing around and me possibly making mincemeat out of it. So no cubby use for the phone. And here we go, the first cut. Blade on, deck height set, and we're off. And this doesn't relay well on camera, but I'm actually on an angle, and it's about a 2-foot rapid slope down to the street. Always iffy on my rear engine rider because it was so narrow. More confident, but still cautious on this mower. And man, for as much as it's rained for the past few months, the yard is already bone dry. It just doesn't take long in Alabama's summer heat. I'm having to take particular care in this part of the lawn, not only from the slope, but this area of the lawn is littered with hidden roots and small stumps that I know from experience will reach up and grab a lawnmower blade. But this mower being so much larger than my old one, it's still easy to maneuver around all these roots and obstacles, more so actually. So far, so good. Now I am going a bit slower here, both to get acquainted with this mower, but also I'm trying to keep the camera from bouncing to try to give you guys the most realistic view. It didn't take long before I wanted to put the cruise control to work, which took a few tries, but I did finally get it. The cruise seems to have 3 or so speeds. It does work well, but most of the time, at least early on, it seemed like the speeds were either too slow or too fast for my liking, though I finally settled into its pace and now it gets extensive use. Of the few complaints that I read on the Lowe's online reviews of this mower, the most prominent of which was that it covers the operator in grass clippings. The reviewers said that it shoots grass from underneath the front of the deck, and that's possibly due to poor deck design. Well, I don't think there's a design problem at all. Now, there is some grass projected out the front, which happens on all mowers, but there are certain unique conditions and unique attributes to this mower that could cause the appearance of more dust, and part of that's due to that exhaust location. That, in conjunction with the tight turn, those wheels being further to the left or right, can create kind of a vortex. And that vortex can, in certain conditions, propel dust forward and upward on both sides. That said, I've cut this same yard countless times on 3 different mowers, and I don't come out any more or less dirty with this one. The true test is going to be this fall when I install the mulching kits and tackle leaves, so we'll see. Now, I can't get through a review on this mower without showing off the tight turning ability, because remember, that tight turn feature, one of the marquees of this mower, and it is super impressive. And the only mower that I've ever been able to make myself motion sick on. It's like being on a merry-go-round or on a carnival ride at peak turn, and as close to a 0 turn as I think it can get, and far more stylish, and probably safer on hills too. And happily, I can report that my deck came perfectly adjusted for a nice even cut, which I can now do in record time, now that I have the extra 14 inches of cut width on each pass. And here's the cut and reverse operation. Move the key to the R and F position and press the yellow button. Some mowers make this super complicated, but super easy on this Craftsman. First mow in the books, and the mower has the dust to prove it, and it did great. No traction issues, even on the hill's edge, and with 1.5 hours of cutting, it only used 1 gallon of gas. I started with 2. This was a very dry lawn, so I didn't expect any grass clumps, and there aren't. The deck on the underside still nice and clean, though per instructions I will still clean it using the washboard. And I have no doubts now, Hydrostatic is 100% where it's at. My first Kohler power plant, and it's super smooth. With the hood tilted, there's barely any wiggle. I expect a long life from this engine, and soon I'll show the first oil change, which will happen per instructions after 5 running hours. Surprisingly, with as much dust as was kicked up on this dry yard, the transmission cooling fan is practically dust-free. Good engineering on a critical component, and I think that sums up the entire mower. Great features and an outstanding deal comparative to other mowers in its class, and the fact that it's a Craftsman makes me happy. Stay tuned for my first oil change video, which is going to be happening soon, and then the mulch kit install this fall, and any other updates as I spend more time with this new Craftsman T210. So what do you think about it? Comment below and share your opinions, and give this video a thumbs up if you found it informative, and be sure you're subscribed and that you have that notification bell active so you don't miss any new videos. Thanks for watching KevReviews, and have a great day.